So now you're getting ready to bake the bread. It's been 3 to 5 hours since you last saw it. You can see it's 50 to 100% bigger than it was before. It was, just a bulk down here. And we're gonna get the oven ready and get the dough ready to put in the oven. So what we're gonna do is put the Dutch oven in the oven, just with the lid on. Everything needs to be in the oven. And I can't do that one-handed, so. It goes in the oven, and just sit it in there and turn on the oven. You're gonna set the oven to 450. And let it warm up. And you wanna get it nice and completely warmed up. You want everything to be hot, including the Dutch oven. So I'm gonna turn this dough out onto the countertop, which I've cleaned off already, and work with it a little bit. You're gonna put some, if you can do this without flour, it's probably better, but I can't, because as I've mentioned several times, my hydration is usually higher than this. And you're gonna want your hands to be floured up and of course clean. So you're gonna turn your dough, and you can see it's got, the bubbles and it's active. You can turn it out onto the countertop, and it should just come out pretty much in one big blob, like that. And what we're gonna do is give it a really good stretch. So you're gonna take it and pull it in all directions and pull it out and clean it out. You can see how, I don't know if you can see how smooth it is. It's trying to go back into its shape. I think this just adds, air and, I don't know if things do. It adds air and works the dough, chemistry, blah, blah, blah. So come off. So stretching, pulling, as if you're making a pizza dough or something. And then once you get it pulled out pretty good, you can see, I don't know if you can see it, but there are air bubbles all over the place in here, which is great. Then you're gonna fold it. So people make a big deal about the fold. I really don't think it's a big deal, but you just fold it over, and you're gonna roll it up. Oh my God. So we're gonna roll here and here, and you see it's kind of looking like a loaf now. So the process here is we want to create tension in this surface area. So to create tension, there's a process, and again, people do it their own way, but you want to push it across the surface and squeeze it under, and you can see it forms a stretch. And so this is where I use my blade a lot. You want the surface to be a little bit sticky so that it sticks and pulls tension in it. And most people do one routine motion like this. I really just have a hard time with that motion, but you just want to tuck it under whatever you do to create that awesome tension in the surface. See that? So and most people do it. It does matter a little because you want it to be a ball, a boule, I think it's called. That piece is always coming back. And you can see it's sticking in my hands. So when it's more hydrated, it's even stickier and really hard to do this, which is why I probably don't know how to do it right, because I'm usually working with very hydrated dough. Okay, you can see it's pretty boule-y looking, don't you think? A soft sourdough boule that you see in the grocery stores. Look at that. So you can do as much as you want. You can play with it, learn how to do it. When I do mine, it's like this. Push it under, squeeze it down. Look at that, that's nice and tight. That's what you want. Look at that bubble. I don't know if that's bad or not, but there's a big old bubble right there. Hope you can see that. Not really. Okay. So there we go. I'm about over the stickiness, so I'm done here. But seriously, you can go whatever you feel like doing. Okay, now is when you take that all-important parchment paper, again, not wax paper. You take parchment paper and you stick this bowl on the parchment paper. Now it turns out you can reuse old parchment paper, and the reason you use parchment paper is because at the end it doesn't stick to the loaf. Trust me, I tried wax paper on my first one and it was a loaf of wax paper intermixed with bread. So must use parchment paper, and you can reuse it. So okay, so here's my parchment paper. I'm gonna take my loaf and stick it on the parchment paper. It'll initially stick. Right now it's gonna stick to the parchment paper, which is fine. And then you're gonna sit it back in your bowl while the oven is preheating. Okay, so putting it back in the bowl. And now we're gonna cover it again and let it sit while the oven preheats. This should be at least 30 minutes. This needs to sit at least 30 minutes. I usually do 30 and it's fine. Today I might do a little longer. I'm gonna sit it for 40 minutes while the oven preheats to a nice hot 450 degrees, and I'll be back. All right, so the oven has been preheated to 450 degrees. The timer has gone off for 40 minutes, and you can see, I'll take it out. You can see the dough has risen a little bit. I think they say you want it to raise 20%. I just go by time, I don't know. You could be more diligent about it. And so now you want to score the bread before you put it in the oven, because with all the gases in it, apparently it'll blow out of itself, potentially, if you don't score it. And I have forgotten to score it before, and it just creates, after it's cooked, it creates its own vents, I guess, for the gases, but it's better if you just score it. So this is the part where I use, this is not mandatory, but it makes it look prettier, I guess, the white rice flour. And you just take some and sprinkle it on the top. And the point of this is that it will highlight your scores, because they can be pretty cool if you know what you're doing, and I don't generally. It'll highlight the scores, and it doesn't get absorbed as more flour into the dough, which is not what you want. So now I'm going to take my, I think it's called a lame or a lame or a llama. I think it's a llama, actually. And score it. And the score should be, in the beginning, just, I'm going to do it on the long side here, a deep score. Again, it's just a vent to let the gases out so it doesn't blow up and misshape itself, I think. And if you look online, you'll find all sorts of gorgeous scores. Like, people make flowers and do stuff like this, but I have never had these scores work well. They don't show up at the end. Maybe I don't do them deep enough. I don't know. Anyway, okay, so we're scoring. Looks like a smiley face. Okay. So that's that. Now you can go ahead and put it in the oven. Let me get the Dutch oven out. It's hot, so hold on. Okay, so the Dutch oven is, 450 degrees. So always use your gloves. We're going to take the lid off and just drop the dough in there with the paper. Like that. It doesn't have to be beautiful. And then put the lid back on without burning yourself. And then put it back in the oven. set a timer for 22 minutes.
22 minutes. Counting down.
So the timer for the first half, that's going to cook 2 ways. It's going to cook 22 minutes with the lid on, and then it'll completely puff up and be its happy loaf. And then 22 minutes with the lid off, and I think that just browns the surface, and you'll see it when I get to it. So we'll come back in 22 minutes. Okay, it's been 22 minutes, so I'm going to take the lid off and put it back in the oven. And you can see where I sliced it. See how it's raised up? That's called an ear. And then those other slices I did weren't as deep, but they were kind of just decorative. So I'm going to put this back in the oven for 22 more minutes to brown it up. And when I put it back in the oven, I kept the lid off. So now the lid comes off and stays off. Okay. All right, second 22 minutes is done. So we'll take it out and let it cool off. You see, I can still use my paper another day. And there it is. It's got the nice big ear sticking up. And you can, the second cycle of cooking is to decide, or to let it brown up. So if you want it, if you like it more crusty and browner, you can let it go a few extra minutes. But yeah, it looks great. That it's all about the ear, and people are big on the ear. So whatever, I don't care, just so it doesn't explode. Let me get this camera off. The other thing is that, so you can see, okay, here's the rice flour that I put on it. You can see how much it expanded. And these were the little hash marks I did, but again, I'm not really good with that, and I don't know what I'm doing. It's probably not deep enough. But you can see there's some sort of design there. Anyway, the mandatory one is the ear. All right, I'll be back to when we cut it open. Sourdough should not be, they say, cut open warm because you'll squish it and it'll be too dense. So I'm gonna wait like a half an hour, let it cool off enough. You can cut it, you risk making it all squishy. You want a really sharp bread knife, and if you don't have one, it's a good time to buy one, because again, you don't want it to smash. So if you have a sharp enough knife, it should be good. We will assess it when we get back and look at what it's supposed to look like on the inside. It's all about what's called the crumb, so we'll look at that when we get back.